The word Sasquatch is not English, it never was. It comes from the Halq'emeylem language spoken by the Sts'ailes people of British Columbia, Canada. Their word is Sasq'ets. It has been part of their vocabulary for longer than English has existed as a language. And here is what most people do not know. When a government Indian agent named J.W. Burns visited the Sts'ailes in the 1920s and published their stories in Canadian newspapers, the Sts'ailes were not telling him about a legend. They were telling him about a neighbor. They were offended when people called it a myth. They said the Sasquatch were real, that they preferred to avoid white men, and that they spoke a language the Sts'ailes could understand. Today, the Sasquatch appears on the official flag of the Sts'ailes nation, not as a cultural relic, not as a mascot, as a symbol of something they believe shares their land. The Sts'ailes have inhabited the Harrison River Valley for over 10,000 years. They say the Sasquatch have been there just as long. To them, this is not a question of belief. It is a statement of coexistence. In the Sts'ailes tradition, the Sasq'ets gather on a mountain they call Sasq'ets Tel, Sasquatch Mountain. They are described as guardians of the forest, spirits of nature, and caretakers of the wild. They are said to hide in caves, to use hearths to keep warm, and to come out in different forms. They are not animals. They are people of a different kind. To encounter one is considered a sign of good luck. To disrespect one is considered dangerous. This is not a modern invention or a tourist attraction. This is a relationship between two peoples sharing the same landscape, maintained through oral tradition for hundreds of generations. And the Sts'ailes are not alone. Over 60 Native American tribes across the continent have their own name for the same creature. Different languages, different geographies, different cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. And yet, over and over, they describe the same thing. This is the story that nobody in the Bigfoot conversation is telling properly. Because the oldest evidence for Bigfoot is not a plaster cast or a reel of celluloid or a government file. It is 15,000 years of indigenous knowledge from people who never needed to prove what they already knew. Start in the Pacific Northwest, where the density of tribal names for this creature is staggering. The Lummi people speak of Ts'emekwes, a race of nocturnal hairy giants that live in the mountains. The Yakama, Umatilla, Nez Perce, and Warm Springs tribes all have their own names, Istiehe and Stiahama among them. Scholar Phil Cash, who is Cayuse and Nez Perce, has said that all communities across the Columbia River Plateau have a name for this being, and not just one name, but many names. Some tribes, he says, have a deep, ongoing relationship with this being, maintained through strong oral tradition. The Hoopa Valley tribe in Northern California calls the creature Omah and describes it not as a monster, but as a wise being that possesses ancient knowledge about forest medicines and natural remedies. The Yurok, also of Northern California, believe Omah is a guardian of the forest that punishes those who take more than they need or fail to show proper respect for nature. In their telling, the creature does not threaten humans, it enforces balance. Move south to Central California and you find the Yokuts of the Tule River Indian Reservation. On a rock face at a site called Painted Rock, there are pictographs estimated to be 1,000 years old. They depict a group of figures the Yokuts call the family. The largest figure is known as Hairy Man, or Mayak Datat, and it matches the physical description of Bigfoot precisely. A large, upright, hair-covered being with a human-like form. These are not modern additions. They have been dated by archaeologists. 1,000 years ago, the Yokuts were drawing what we now call Bigfoot on the walls of their sacred sites. Move east to the Great Plains. The Lakota Sioux speak of Chiye-Tanka, which translates to Great Elder Brother. This is not a monster. This is family. Chiye-Tanka is described as a watcher, a protector of the land and its creatures. The Lakota do not fear it. They respect it the way one respects an elder relative who has been on the land longer than anyone remembers. Move further east to the Appalachian Mountains. The Cherokee tell stories of Tsul Kalu, which translates roughly to the Lord of the Game. Tsul Kalu is a massive, hairy figure who oversees the animals of the forest. He is not a predator, he is a steward. In Cherokee tradition, he reminds humans of their responsibility to the natural world. Kill only what you need. Take only what you can use. The forest belongs to something older than you. The Choctaw of the southeast have Champé, a hairy giant that kidnaps children who wander too far from camp. This is a warning story, used by parents for generations to keep children close. But it is also a physical description, because Champé is described consistently as tall, bipedal, covered in hair, and living in the deep woods. The Chickasaw have Lofa, with nearly identical descriptions. The Cheyenne have Maximista. The Iroquois have their own giants. The Dogrib of northern Canada have Larien. The Tenina of Alaska have Nantina, the same word used to describe the creatures in your Portlock, Alaska video. Over 60 names, from Alaska to Florida, from the Pacific coast to the Appalachian Mountains, spoken in languages that share no common ancestor, told by peoples who had no contact with each other for millennia. And these were not just stories told around fires, they shaped behavior. In the Pacific Northwest, many tribes had specific rules about how to behave when you entered Sasquatch territory. The Warm Springs tribes of Oregon identify certain beings as stick Indians, a category of hostile forest dwellers who steal food, whistle to disorient travelers, and cause people to become lost. Children in these communities were warned never to say the names of these creatures aloud, because speaking a name could draw their attention. This is not a casual legend. This is a survival protocol passed from parent to child for generations, as seriously as any warning about bears or swift rivers. In 1924, when miners on Mount St. Helens in Washington reported being attacked by giant ape-like creatures that threw boulders at their cabin all night, the newspapers treated it as a sensational curiosity. But the local Native American communities were not surprised. They used the incident to publicly discuss their own knowledge of creatures they called Tsiatko, hairy wild beings of the woods. Their traditions about these creatures had been documented as far back as 1865 by ethnographer George Gibbs. The miners were terrified. The indigenous people essentially said they had been trying to tell everyone for centuries. And here is the detail that should stop you cold. The physical descriptions match, not exactly because each tribe filters the creature through its own cultural lens, but the core features are identical across the continent. It is bipedal, taller than a man, typically 6 to 9 feet. It is covered in hair, usually described as brown or reddish-brown. It has a human-like face, but with heavier features. It has no ability to speak human language, communicating instead through whistles, grunts, and gestures. It is foul-smelling and usually nocturnal. It lives in deep forest, typically at higher elevations, and it avoids human contact when possible. Physically, it is powerful beyond any known animal. These descriptions were documented by ethnographers in the 1800s, long before the word Bigfoot existed, long before the Patterson film, long before anyone was looking for a mystery. They were simply part of the record of indigenous knowledge, sitting in academic papers and field notes, waiting for someone to notice the pattern. And the pattern extends beyond physical description. Multiple tribes, independently, describe the same behaviors. The Lummi say Ts'emekwes can change form, appearing as a deer or a bear, to confuse hunters. The Nootka of Vancouver Island say Sasquatch can become invisible. The Lakota describe Chiye-Tanka as a being that moves between the physical world and the spirit realm. These are not descriptions of an animal. They are descriptions of something that exists in a category Western science does not have a name for, something physical enough to leave tracks, but elusive enough to evade every search party and every hunting expedition for centuries. Modern cryptozoologists have spent decades trying to prove Bigfoot exists using motion-activated sensors, thermal detection, DNA analysis, and plaster casts. They have found compelling evidence but no definitive proof. In their pursuit, most of them have overlooked the single largest body of evidence available, the testimony of the people who lived on this continent for 15,000 years and who were never confused about what they were seeing. The Sts'ailes did not need modern technology. They had oral tradition maintained across 400 generations. The Yokuts did not need plaster casts. They carved the creature into stone 1,000 years ago. The Lakota did not need DNA analysis. They called it elder brother and moved through the world knowing it was there. There is a profound arrogance in the way the Bigfoot conversation has unfolded in Western culture. The creature was given an English name in 1958 when a California road contractor found large footprints near a logging site. That event is treated as the beginning of the Bigfoot story. It is not the beginning. It is the moment white America noticed something that Indigenous America had known for millennia. The beginning is somewhere in the deep past, before written history, when the first people to cross into North America encountered something already living in these forests and gave it a name in a language we may never fully recover. And this is where the Bigfoot mystery connects to something larger. It is not just North America. The Sherpa of Nepal have the Yeti. The Aboriginal Australians have the Yowie. The people of Sumatra have the Orang Pendek. The Mongolians have the Almas. The Ute have the Nantinak. The Ainu of Japan have the Hibagan. The Russians have the Almasty. And as we covered in a previous video, they captured one. Every inhabited continent, every indigenous culture with deep roots in a forested or mountainous landscape. The same basic description. A large, bipedal, hair-covered being that is more than an animal and less than a human, or perhaps something alongside human, occupying a space in the natural order that modern taxonomy has no category for. 60 names in North America alone, hundreds worldwide, spanning tens of thousands of years, maintained by oral traditions that have proven accurate in countless other domains, from astronomy to ecology to medicine. When indigenous peoples told early European scientists that certain plants had medicinal properties, they were initially dismissed. Those plants are now the basis of modern pharmaceuticals. When indigenous peoples described animal behaviors that European naturalists had not observed, they were initially dismissed. Those behaviors were later confirmed by field biology. When indigenous peoples described migration patterns, weather cycles, and geological events, they were initially dismissed. They were later proven correct by Western science. In every case, indigenous knowledge was right and Western skepticism was wrong. The pattern is so consistent it should be embarrassing. The Aboriginal Australians described animal species that European naturalists said could not exist. They existed. The Inuit described ice patterns and ocean currents that Western cartographers said were impossible. They were real. The Polynesians navigated thousands of miles of open ocean using star patterns and wave readings that Western sailors said could not work. They worked. The track record of indigenous observational knowledge is not debatable. It is one of the most reliable sources of ecological and zoological information on the planet, tested across millennia and proven correct again and again. And yet, when those same indigenous peoples, with those same oral traditions and that same track record of accuracy, describe a large bipedal creature living in the forests of their homeland, the response from Western science is still dismissal. The Sts'ailes put the creature on their flag. The Yokuts carved it into sacred rock 1,000 years ago. The Lakota call it family. More than 60 tribes across a continent that spans 6,000 miles describe the same being in the same terms, independently, across 15,000 years of continuous habitation. At some point, the question stops being whether Bigfoot is real. The question becomes why we keep ignoring the people who have been answering that question for longer than our civilization has existed. 60 names, one creature, 15,000 years, and the people who know it best have never doubted it for a single day.